There we go. Fish. Hammered it. Woo! Come here, buddy. Woo, he's making her some runs. Went to a more aggressive lure there. I am standing on this really sketchy ice. Like there's just like a 20-foot wide shelf of, ooh, it's a big bow. 20-foot wide shelf of 4-inch ice, and then like literally right behind me there's an eyeball. It's wide open water, and there's like 2 inches just a few foot away from me. And it's been a really mild year here in the Pacific Northwest, but it just feels like everywhere the ice seasons seem to be getting a bit shorter and shorter. I'm always able to find ice because I have the advantage of having mountains nearby, and I can move up in altitude and find ice and small brook trout on small brook trout lakes. But you know, those lowland lakes, those bigger bodies of water, they definitely feel like they're not gonna freeze up this year before Christmas, or even probably by mid-January. It's the long-range forecast looks so mild. And I've been hearing a lot, especially from my Great Lakes and New England subscribers. You know, the ice seasons there just seem to be getting later and later and later. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of my research on this topic, because it's something that's really interesting to me. Whew, this thing is a big bow. Take my time with them. Yeah, so one of the things that I love, like, I'm really into space exploration, and I like looking at images from the International Space Station looking down on Earth, especially in winter, because it's just so striking to see all that white, all that snow and ice that dominates the northern hemisphere. It's a reminder that we are still living in an ice age. There's many periods when this planet had no polar ice caps, and ice would be pretty limited. At the same time, we're in this period known as an interglaciation period. That's when the glaciers retract and the Earth warms up a little bit. And so the seasonal flux of the ice is really dramatic. God, this thing's so big. Gotta get his head turned. Might be able to get him here. But for me, I've been alive for over 40 years now, and I've seen really dramatic shifts in the extent of fishable ice. Growing up in South Central Kansas, my dad would take us ice fishing all the time, and I would say in the last 2 decades, I think he's been able to get out maybe a couple times in the last 15 years. It used to be something that he could do annually, but it's just not the case anymore. And we're seeing later and later onset of fishable ice in the Great Lakes and in New England. And ice off is coming sooner and sooner too on those lakes as well. But almost got him. Almost. I'm gonna have to take off my glove here. See if I can scoop him up. Come on, buddy. These big bows are always a challenge to get through the ice. Okay. Oh, no. One more turn and I'll have you. Oh, man. See if we can carve a little path for him here. Make it easier for me to scoop him up. Nope. He's like, I don't want no hands on me. Cannot get my hand's getting soaked. There we go. Look at that beautiful fish right there. Whew, that is a tank. Awesome. That is a gorgeous fish. Get that hook in him. There we go. Get him back on his way. See ya. That was awesome. Get those gloves back on. Holy cow. It is cold when your hands get wet. I had to switch up to a spoon on that guy because I had a couple fish come in earlier and they were just kind of looky-loos at jigs. And I thought, well, I'll go aggressive on them and something I can jig a little bit harder and a little bit more action. That's a little green Castmaster there. Favorite ice fishing lures. So one of the things that's always struck me that's, different about ice fishing in the Northeast and around the Great Lakes region versus the Northwest is, there in those regions of the United States, ice fishing it's a huge and popular pastime. And, the state agencies have regular ice reports that they put out, and they really go above and beyond to promote that fishery. Whereas, here I live here in Washington, I've tried to ask, local bios and law enforcement about ice conditions, and they refuse to tell you anything because they don't want to be liable for anything. And so they do very little to promote the sport, aside from occasionally making a YouTube video on ice fishing safety and whatnot. But because those other states like Minnesota and Maine, where it's so important to their license sales to communities, it's a huge part of winter outdoor sports, is they have this long history of data collection. So they have all this data on different lakes. And in Maine, they were saying that in most lakes, they're seeing anywhere from 14 to 20 day reduction in ice fishing opportunity. And, I have a lot of friends I follow in Maine who ice fish. And, I feel like here, where I'm ice fishing annually, early November, I can find those small brook trout and cutthroat trout lakes in the mountains. They're a month or two out from most of their ice fishing. And it's been really mild there the past few years. And likewise in Minnesota, they've seen similar trends on their long-term data sets. They have some lakes there they've been monitoring first ice dates and ice out dates going back almost 100 years. It's just really cool to see that kind of data. I'll put links to some of these articles too that I read down below. And one of the things that we're seeing in some of the Minnesota lakes is that, so they're getting, slightly later first ice dates, but what's happening more frequently is they're getting ice off much earlier. And I'm not sure how much that really impacts the sport. I feel like here, and also when I lived in Minnesota, it's like there's this huge interest in ice fishing early on and into the peak of the season. And then by late ice season, interest has kind of waned. Everybody's kind of ice fished out. And everybody's kind of eager to get out on open water. But it just shows that, there's this constriction of the ice fishing season in those areas. Now here in the Northwest, I've only been ice fishing here. I moved to the inland Northwest about 6 years ago. And here there's a ton of variability year to year. And so it's harder for me to parse out any trends. There's no long-term data sets that I have been able to find. But, one of the things that's different here in the Northwest, and I think in the West in general versus, say, the Great Lakes and New England, is that we have a lot of altitude variation due to mountains. And that kind of buffers us a little bit because those smaller, higher mountain lakes will cap over really early. It's a very short summer, when you get above 5,000-6,000 feet in the Northwest. And, when you get into the Rocky Mountains, when you start up getting around 8,000-9,000 feet, things get pretty cold pretty fast. But here in the Northwest, the primary predictor and driver for me in terms of ice season has always been the El Nino La Nina cycles. And so when it's a La Nina year, that's where you get this colder than average water off of the west coast of South America along the equator. We tend to be much colder. We tend to have a lot more snow. And when it's an El Nino year like it is this year, it tends to be much more mild. We'll get more rain and less snow. And so it can be really poor ice fishing years during those El Nino years. And so for me, there's no way I can really parse out. I haven't seen any trend like I've seen like on the southern edge of the ice belt in Kansas, and where, it's clearly there's been a transition away from ice fishing opportunities. But if I look just at our like mid to low elevation lakes and ice conditions, it's, to me, the big predictor has always been La Nina and El Nino. And, the past few years have been La Nina, and we've had incredible ice, like really early ice. We're out on really large, deep lakes by Christmas. And, in El Nino years, like it's this year, I typically won't see fishable ice on those lakes until mid-January, or maybe not even at all. So that's kind of what I'm expecting this year, is be a really short and tough ice season, especially on our more popular, deeper and bigger, lower elevation lakes that are a lot easier for folks to get to. The other issue here in the Northwest and the Rockies in general is we get a lot of snow, and what will happen is our lakes will cap, and they will then get a bunch of snow dumped on them, and it will insulate them. There's still heat trapped in the lakes, and the snow just traps it there, and so we just get this really nasty, slushy, gross, weak ice underneath it. And it's just really tough conditions to fish in. Even if you can find thick enough ice, you just get lots of water coming up like today, or it's all slushy. But at least we still have a season, even if we have to sit on slushy ice. Got a fish on over here. Static rod finally got one. All right. He's off. Darn it. No, he's still there. He's still there. Woohoo! Usually I do better at static rods at this lake. This guy hit a little scud fly. Ooh, it's going to be another nice fish, I think. Yeah, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's happening with the ice fishing season where you live. Have you noticed a trend over the past few years or past decade? Do you feel like there's less opportunity? Also, let me know, what part of the world you're ice fishing in. Are you in the Northeast, Great Lakes, Great Plains, or out here in the West? And are you concerned about the decline of ice fishing opportunity, or can you just switch things up and go to open water? I realize for a lot of folks who don't have boats, the ice fishing season is their one opportunity to get out and really cover water that they normally would not get to cover. So it's really kind of a neat opportunity for folks without boats. They can get out and fish some of those species which are not quite as easy to catch from shore. Ooh, this guy is a beast. Not too happy about that. Not ready yet. Just got him right on the nose with that little scud fly. He's chunkier than the last one. Boy, these fat bows, they are tough through the ice. They are really hard to scoop up. It's like they learned how to swim backwards or something. Oh. That is a football. Wow. I'm gonna get my other hand wet. Look at that tank. Jeez, he's a beast. That thing is huge. So cool. And you can see that little scud fly I got him on. Just a little tungsten scud. All right, let's get that big chunky boy back under the ice. Let him get a little water pumped across the gills. See you later, man. Awesome. Woo! All right, guys, I look forward to hearing your feedback on your thoughts on shortening of ice seasons due to warmer conditions. I'll see you next time. Just remember, fish smarter, not harder. Bye, guys.